Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are in Battle of the Cairns playing as the Empire against the Dawi. And as was recently requested, if I could do a Black Powder Empire build, well, I figured if we're going to do Black Powder, you gotta go big or you gotta go home. So we've got a lot of Black Powder in this composition. It's based off a build I used to run not often, but I used to run it very successfully against dwarves, which is just mass shooting. But with the implementation of unit limits, now you're kind of got to play around. You gotta play a bit more conservatively. And when I say a bit more conservatively, I mean you bring like 2 more infantry units than I used to. But either way, let's break this build down and see what happens here on the Cairns. And for my lord, bring Boris Todbringer. So Boris, I think a decent choice for this because I want to bring Lore of Life, or Lore of Light, sorry. So having a lord who can self-heal is nice. Plus, he does have the White Cloak of Ulrich, he does have Crush the Weak, and he does have the Midland Runefang, and he does cause Fear and Terror on his Griffin. So you have basically a lord who can heal, and at the same time, he can dish out a lot of disruption and terrify away dwarf units. Dwarfs do a lot of the lower end dwarf units can definitely be terror routed somewhat effectively, so it's definitely nifty on Boris. Alongside him, we do have a captain helping stiffen up the front line. He simply has hold the line. He's on foot. Nothing fancy, but he's there to make sure these spears don't rout too soon and hopefully buy more time for all of our shooting. Alongside him, a light wizard who has net of a Mintok as well as frost protection and a power stone. The net of a Mintok might seem a little silly against dwarves, but honestly, if your opponent brings a bunch of slayers, or even if they've got a few slayers, you want something to protect that back line. Finally, for our infantry, our protection detail here. Front line is a mix of 4 spearmen as well as 2 great swords mixed in to that lineup. So the great swords, you know, they'll be able to outtrade a lot of dwarven great weapons. They'll be able to bog down and sort of tie down the dwarves for a good amount of time. So I definitely do enjoy them in this matchup. For the rest of the comp, it is simply a bunch of handguns and other sort of black powder weaponry. We do have 6 units of handgunners in the back here, all lined up, immediately teeing off on these poor miners blasting charges who my opponent vanguarded. We also do have the Sterling's Revenge. And then 2 units of Outriders out here on the side with grenade launchers. And grenade launchers really good against the tight formations the dwarves tend to field, even though they do have good armor. And yeah, we do have, you can see all these gaps in our line here to provide easy access for our handguns to fire through, especially against the dwarves, because the dwarves are shorter than Empire infantry models, so oftentimes it's hard to get a clear line of sight. And otherwise, not much to say really. It's just a staggered out comp so that if my opponent sort of starts pressuring me in one angle, we can sort of fall back and we can maintain a constant crossfire. For my opponent, he did sort of move these miners up to the front to zone me out. He has gone with a pretty traditional wide Dawi line. For his lord, he is bringing a Rune Lord back here. He's simply got the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, as well as, of course, the Locus of Power because he's on his toilet seat. Front line, 2 miners as well as the Egret miners, providing a bit of a zoning tool if in case I decide to simply rush him, which is a common Empire strat in this match, just rush. Second line, Longbeards with great weapons and mixed in with, I do believe there was a Dwarf Warrior in here. I guess it's all Longbeards with great weapons and Dwarf Warriors with great weapons are second line. Some Thunders to provide that AP crossfire, a cannon in the back, or 2 cannons in the back, a Dwarf Warrior, and then Dragonback Slayers as well as normal Slayers. So a whole bunch of troops staggered out in what's basically an onion build. And if I try to push in with an aggressive push here, I'm probably going to get shot up and destroyed. Now, seeing my opponent has these miners, I decide, you know what, we're not going to push in immediately. We're just going to whittle them down. The handguns here are teeing off. They're going to start melting these miners in a crossfire. And you can see immediately I'm pushing out my captain and Boris and the light wizard to intercept these miners before they can get their blasting charges onto my spears. And the great swords here are going to fold in. They're going to collapse onto these miners' blasting charges, be able to intercept them from the side, and start whittling them down. And my opponent isn't able to really get many, if any, charges off here. So that's very fortunate for me, and we're able to start terror-routing these troops away. The Egret miners falling apart immediately. And anytime, Sterling's Revenge here, sneaky, looking to infiltrate into the backline, get some shots. And the Outriders with grenade launchers, getting the jump on these Thunders from behind. My opponent missed them in the corner. And now the Thunders, you can see, taking quite a bit of damage. Those grenades, even though some of them are hitting the trees there, which kind of sucks. And in fact, doing some friendly fire with the grenades. We are able to whittle down these Thunders quite a lot from the tree cover before they're able to respond. So getting in about, I don't know, 20 or 40% of their HP. Something like that. It's pretty efficient. Some satchel charges do go down the great swords here, but they are able to sort of bog my opponent down. Now the spears are counterattacking, looking to intercept my opponent's push and prevent him from pushing through. Unfortunately, we do miss our charge here, so the Longbeards are going to get a good intercept on these great swords, start munching through them pretty efficiently. That said, Sterling's Revenge sneaking around this way, looking to get some side shots into the Thunders or into the cannons. And my opponent's line, because he's engaging in this sort of mishmash engagement. A lot of his troops are getting bogged down, tied down by single units. Oftentimes the great swords here tying down the great weapons, and they're going to be tying down more units as my opponent pours more resources into that fight. You can see over here the greatswords holding up the longbeards and dwarf warriors, the great weapons. And my opponent's also getting blocked from firing by his own troops, which is definitely nifty for me. Unfortunately, Sterling's Revenge here does get hit by the Master of Round of Then Ruin, followed up by a whole salvo from the Thunders, so they're definitely having a bad day, but they're able to unload on these cannons and do some hurt. In the meantime, the grenade launchers here whittling down the Thunderers, taking off another 900 or so HP before the Outriders do bail and run. And the handguns applying that constant pressure, pushing forward, keeping up that steady fire, and slowly but surely whittling down this dwarven formation. And that's really, really useful for me. Certainly Sterling's Revenge here is getting whittled down, but they are going to recover. They're going to hold up their leadership because they are very, very tough to break. And so all in all, things going well. Now over here, a bit of a lapse in micro, and my Outriders get caught by Slayers. So that's not something you're going to see every day. Outriders getting caught by Slayers. But before I can get them to run, I do get take some damage. In the meantime, though, Dragonback Slayers pushing through the front line, diving in on my handguns, but caught by that crossfire. And you can see how that wide, staggered deployment is really helping me here, as the handguns are just able to pour in a devastating crossfire. And before my opponent can get very far, you're going to see here these handgunners have been escaping. We're going to get these spears on an intercept course. And my Light Wizard is going to cast the Night of Mintok on these guys, preventing them from really applying that pressure that they wanted to apply. And suddenly these Dragonback Slayers are in a terrible spot, being hit by these spearmen from behind, which means the spearmen are actually mostly safe from the friendly fire. And suddenly you can see that they're having a horrible time of it. So really not going well. Here in the front line, in the meantime, the greatswords and the spears holding up these longbeards forever. You can see the greatswords here actually winning out in the long run. And the back line, Sterling's Revenge, overrunning the back line like a bunch of champs, just swarming over. While Boris tears up these handguns and these Thunders and really disrupts the backline. You can see Sterling's Revenge with their solid melee stats. These guys are basically like a mini swordsman unit. They're really, really strong in close quarters. They've got immunity psychology too, really good leadership for shooting units. So they're able to just overwhelm this backline and get on top of these cannons and just start shutting down my opponent's fire. Meantime, Boris here just feasting on these Thunderers, even as these Slayers do start closing in. And in the meantime, my opponent's Dragonback Slayers basically goners, the handgun crossfire pouring in, and we are going to pop a Phos Protection on these greatswords, keeping them in the fight just a little bit longer and allowing them to tie down these great weapon units for a bit longer. And because of that, our handguns are going to get so much more value. Unfortunately, though, there is definitely a bit of an overlap now. Despite our carefully sort of staggered formation early on, now we're definitely kind of overlapping. And I probably should have moved this unit of handguns out to the flank a little bit. But oh well, what can you do? The captain over here, you can see bogging down these Dwarf Warriors as well as these Longbeards. So definitely taking one for the team. He's getting torn apart, but we are going to shortly shift our fire, realizing that I've got this lovely pocket formed up here. We're actually going to shift all of our fire onto these guys and start destroying them in short order. Over here in the meantime, Boris getting tied down by Slayers, but they're not the Dragonback variety, so they're not going to be able to slow him down. In the meantime, he is able to just rout and terrify all of these troops. The Sterling's Revenge here, taking one for the team, tearing up these cannons, and suddenly you can see those grenades and the guns pouring into this clump of dwarves and longbeards, and they're having a god-awful time of it. Just explosions saturating this Empire captain, who's standing strong for Sigmar here, as all these filthy stunties get sent fleeing back to their holds, and this is going to be a grudging for sure. In the meantime, over here, the Rune Lord finally trying to shut down my gunnery mobs. His Slayers have failed. His troops are falling apart. Another fast protection going down. These 25 great swords, keeping them in the fight just a little bit longer. And now as my opponent tries to push through with his Rune Lord, we are going to net him down. And he's trapped in the crossfire of 4 units of handguns, or 6 units of handguns, in fact. So it's going to be a shatter at this point. The guy does have some decent missile resist, in fact. He's got, I think, 20% or 25% physical, 15% missile. So do keep in mind, he's still got 40% resistance to the handgun fire here. But it's nowhere near enough against 6 handguns, and he is going to fall apart. You can see the grenades there pouring in. The last 2 great swords here, doing their country proud. And my opponent's Slayers are back here. Just doing nothing, really. They were trying to chase Boris. They did get rid of the Sterling's Revenge, finally, but way too little, way too late. They are now getting bombarded by the grenade launchers, who, of course, are going to have a great time of it. These guys do have some pretty monstrous weapon strength against clumps like that. So, regardless, good game. A quick, sort of devastating match with a lot of black powder. And It's a build that works surprisingly well. The only real, in my opinion, effective dwarf counter to this is a lot of Slayers. And so if your opponent goes with a mass Slayer cheese, this build is probably going to lose. But if your opponent goes with anything else, any sort of more conventional dwarven build, the problem with Slayers cheese is obviously that if your opponent goes with a super wide Empire build, it's going to fall apart. Slayers cannot go cost efficiently go toe-to-toe with things like great swords or swordsmen and units like that. So the dwarves essentially don't tend to run those builds very often, the Slayer builds, because Empire doesn't usually rely on cavalry in this matchup, in my experience, and you generally kind of rely on mobbing with infantry in close quarters usually. So Slayers for that are not, or Slayers are not that good for that. But looking over the build, a lot of ridiculousness. The handguns just really delivering that stopping power alongside the Outriders, grenade launchers, and the Sterling Revenge. Dwarves have issues dealing with it because they obviously have to invest quite a lot in their front line and in their infantry, so they don't really have the tools necessarily to deal with this much shooting. My opponent had a few Thunders, he did have a few cannons, but that's just not quite enough, in my opinion, to zone this away. Even if my opponent did have those Thunders in the fight sooner, even if he was able to force off my Outriders somehow, I'm not entirely sure how, maybe with like the cannons, it's still not that much firepower. It's still, I could still put like 3 handguns on each of the unit of the Thunderers and overwhelm them. Maybe one-way unit routes, but it'll come back eventually, and in the meantime we've removed 2 shooting units from play. Empire Captain, of course, great at holding the line. The Spears and the Greatswords also good for just holding the line, though ironically they did actually win out in their respective fights. The Greatswords, you can see, gained a chevron and 2 chevrons, sliding out with the Rune Longbeards and the Dwarf Chaff Troops, so definitely they're paying their dues. Grenade Launcher is one of those interesting picks in this matchup that I found to be very effective. Even if you're not doing a handgun build. Dwarf formations are very compact, and Outriders don't have bad AP damage. People underestimate it because they look at the card and it doesn't say AP. But there are 36 models in the unit, and those, I think each of them does like 14. We can quickly see what they do, but they've got a pretty high, like the weapon strength is pretty nuts. You can see 68 missile damage, but of that, 15 explosive AP. So stacked on top of the 34 base, and most dwarves don't have over most of them have like 100 or less armor, so you're going to get some value out of your non-AP. The formations are incredibly compact. There's 36 models firing. It's not like a lot of other it's not like mortars, for example. With mortars, I find that part of the issue, the mortars don't tend to get as much value in comparison because they've only got 16 AP damage and there's only 3 guns firing, so even if you're getting every mortar shot on point, it's not doing that much damage. But with the grenade launchers, it's devastating, and they're only 800 gold, so not like the most expensive investment ever. So definitely very useful in that matchup. For my opponent's build, I don't have, honestly, that much critique of it. Personally, I do think you want to go a little bit, perhaps wider on infantry. I'd probably dump some of the great weapons in favor of more miners. I don't always run Slayers in this matchup either. I'm not necessarily convinced that Slayers are that great in the Empire matchup because you can usually deal with the Empire Cav with units with just massive other infantry. But honestly, I don't think the build was all that bad. I just think that it's really going to struggle against this much shooting from Empire, which is why when I do play Dwarves, I usually do try to have a little bit of extra shooting. It can be nifty just to have that extra unit of, say, Thunderers, or even if you bring like an extra unit or 2 of Rangers, just to be able to zone off enemy shooting, deal a little bit better with units like Outriders. You can kind of invest some of your shooting against one target, some of your shooting against another one. If you can spread your resources more efficiently, you're going to get better results that way, because you really can't try to go into close quarters against, or you can't try to run down, in my opinion, Empire troops in most situations. If you try to go with like a mass of, if you try to bring gyrocopters against handguns are going to swat them out of the sky. They're one of the only shooting units that's super good against flyers of that sort. If you try to bring Slayers, well, you saw what happened there. If you don't have a horde of Slayers, one of you of Slayers is just going to get crossfired, in my opinion. So I don't know. But regardless, well played to my opponent. I do hope you guys found the video entertaining and fun to watch. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you have any comments, any criticisms, any questions, any requests, as usual, don't hesitate to put them down below. I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.